Warmth filled our childhood home each Christmas even after our parents passed. When my sister Allison inherited the house but could not afford payments, I stepped in. Family supports family, I told her, moving in with cash and renovation skills. For 6 years, I paid the mortgage while transforming the neglected property. Never imagined she would betray me after all I had sacrificed. The locks changed that rainy February night. Began an ugly war neither of us was prepared for. Hey, before I continue this painful story, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button if you have ever been blindsided by someone you trusted. Growing up in suburban Maryland, our family home was the center of my universe. The 2-story colonial, with the wraparound porch, had been in our family for generations. My father, a skilled craftsman, taught me everything he knew about construction and renovation from the time I could hold a hammer. Those weekends working alongside him in the garage workshop are some of my most treasured memories. My sister Allison, 4 years older than me, preferred helping our mother in the kitchen or tending the garden that stretched across our backyard. Everything changed on a stormy October night when I was 22. The knock on my apartment door came at 2 in the morning. Police officers with grim expressions. My parents had been driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver crossed the median. They died instantly. The foundation of my world crumbled beneath my feet. The funeral passed in a blur of black suits and casseroles dropped off by neighbors. When the reading of the will came, we learned that our parents had left the family home to Allison. It made sense. She was older, more established in her nursing career. But the inheritance came with a burden, a substantial mortgage that our parents had taken out to fund their retirement dreams. Travels they would never take now. I cannot afford these payments on my salary. Allison confessed, tears streaming down her face as we sat at our parents' kitchen table reviewing the paperwork. I might have to sell it. The thought of strangers living in our family home felt like another death. I had just completed my degree in construction management and had started my first job with a local building company. Let me help, I offered. I can move in and pay the mortgage while helping fix the place up. Dad always talked about renovating the kitchen and finishing the basement. Allison looked up hope, replacing grief in her eyes. You would do that. Family supports family, I replied, echoing our father's favorite saying. And someday when we get the mortgage paid down, we can talk about adding my name to the deed. Make it official that we are co-owners. She agreed, enthusiastically grateful for the solution. Of course, Hale. That makes perfect sense. This place should belong to both of us. With a handshake and a hug, our arrangement was set. I moved into my old bedroom the following weekend, mortgage payment ready for the first of the month. I never imagined that this act of family loyalty would lead to the most painful betrayal of my life. The next 6 years of my life revolved around that house. Every month without fail, I transferred $2,300 to cover the mortgage payment. In construction, work can be feast or famine, but I always made sure the house payment came first, before my car payment, before new clothes, even before proper meals during the lean months. My career as a construction project manager gave me the skills to transform our aging family home, but the unpredictable schedule meant I would sometimes work 16-hour days, then have a week with no projects. I used every free moment to pour myself into renovations. The kitchen came first. I gutted the 30-year-old cabinets, installed custom maple ones that I built myself in the garage workshop. Granite countertops replaced the chipped laminate, and state-of-the-art appliances brought the heart of the home into the modern era. $24,000 of my savings disappeared into that kitchen, but seeing Mom's old space transformed into something beautiful felt like honoring her memory. The bathroom remodels came next. $18,000 for the master bath and guest bathroom combined. I created a spa-like retreat with a rainfall shower and heated tile floors. Allison loved it, telling all her nurse friends about her talented brother who works magic with hammer and nails. The basement was my masterpiece. What had once been a dark, damp storage space became a fully finished entertainment area with a custom bar, media room, and extra bedroom. That project alone cost me $30,000, not counting the countless hours of labor I put in myself. All told, I had invested over $200,000 in mortgage payments and renovations, transforming the property from a dated colonial to one of the most desirable homes in the neighborhood. Property values in our area had skyrocketed, and what had once been a financial burden for Allison was now a valuable asset. Thanks entirely to my contributions. Things began to change about 2 years into our arrangement. Allison started dating Daniel, a pharmaceutical sales rep, with a flashy car, and expensive taste in watches. 6 months later, they were engaged. I welcomed him to the family, even offering to build their wedding arch and renovate the backyard for their ceremony. We decided to get married in Cancun instead, Allison informed me. Just a small ceremony with a few friends. I was not invited. After they returned from their honeymoon, Daniel moved in. The dynamic of the house shifted immediately. What had been a comfortable shared space between siblings became increasingly territorial. Daniel treated me like a tenant, rather than family, complaining when my construction materials cluttered the garage that I had converted into a workshop. "When are you planning to get your own place?" became his standard greeting. I would remind him of my agreement with Allison, and he would smile tightly and walk away. A year later, Daniel's brother Troy moved in temporarily after losing his apartment. Troy was everything Daniel pretended not to be: loud, messy, and perpetually unemployed. He took over the basement I had painstakingly finished, leaving beer cans on my custom bar and cigarette burns on the furniture I had selected. The house felt cramped with 4 adults. I began to notice whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Daniel's passive-aggressive behaviors escalated, moving my belongings, complaining about my early morning schedule, accidentally throwing away my mail. One evening, I overheard Daniel and Troy talking in the kitchen. "When are you guys finally going to get the freeloader out?" Troy asked. Daniel's response chilled me. "Working on it. Allison is starting to see things my way." Freeloader I had paid every mortgage payment for 6 years. I had transformed this house with my own hands and wallet. Without me, they would have lost this place years ago. The next morning, I confronted Allison in the kitchen before her shift. "We need to talk about our agreement," I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "I have put over $200,000 into this house. We agreed that eventually we would add my name to the deed." Allison would not meet my eyes. "That was just talk, Hale. Your name is not on any paperwork." It was never going to be. The coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand. "What are you saying? I have paid the mortgage for 6 years. I have renovated every inch of this place. And we appreciate it," she said, gathering her purse and keys. "But Daniel thinks it is time we had our own space. You have a good job now. You should find your own place." "Daniel thinks," I echoed in disbelief. This was our parents' home. Our agreement had nothing to do with Daniel. "Things change," she replied coldly. "People grow up and start their own families." As she left for work, I stood in the kitchen I had built with my own hands, trying to process her betrayal. Later, I discovered through a mutual friend that Daniel had convinced Allison I was taking advantage of them, living rent-free in their house while controlling the property through my renovations. The truth had been completely twisted, and my sister had chosen her husband's manipulative narrative over our years of shared history and sacrifice. The morning of February 12th started like any other. I left before dawn for a 3-day work trip overseeing a commercial renovation project in Baltimore. The weather forecast called for rain, so I packed extra gear and said a quick goodbye to Allison on my way out. Daniel and Troy were still asleep as usual. When I returned late Friday night, exhausted from 72 hours of problem-solving and manual labor, I found the front door lock had been changed. My key no longer fit. Standing in the pouring rain, I tried again, thinking perhaps I was simply too tired to operate a simple lock. But there was no mistake. I had been locked out of my home of 6 years. I knocked, then pounded on the door. Lights were on inside, but no one answered. Finally, I called Allison's cell phone. "Where are you?" I asked when she answered. "I am at home. Where are you?" "Standing outside in the rain, because my key does not work anymore." A pause. "We changed the locks yesterday. I sent you a text." I checked my phone. Nothing. "No, you did not. Why would you change the locks without telling me?" Another pause. "Check your email." "I sent you a letter from our lawyer yesterday. You need to find your own place finally, Hale. We have been more than generous letting you stay this long." The disconnection of the call felt like a physical blow. I stood there, rain soaking through my jacket, staring at the house I had poured my heart, soul, and bank account into for 6 years. Through the living room window, I could see Troy sprawled on the couch watching television, deliberately ignoring the commotion at the front door. Walking around to the back porch, I discovered the reason Allison had mentioned a text. There, piled under the awning, were garbage bags filled with my belongings. My clothes, books, toiletries, all stuffed into black plastic, as if they were trash. A hastily scrawled note was taped to one. The rest is in the garage. You have until Sunday to get everything. I opened the unlocked garage door to find more of my possessions piled haphazardly. Many items were missing. My father's watch collection passed down to me before his death, the specialized tools I had collected over the years, the leather recliner I had bought with my first bonus check. When I texted Allison about these items, her reply was instant. We do not know what you are talking about. Everything you own is there. In the privacy of my truck parked on the street outside what had been my home just days before I finally broke down. 6 years of mortgage statements were stored in my email. 72 payments of $2,300 each. $165,600. Not to mention the $80,000 in renovations. All of it gone in an instant, with no legal recourse, because I had trusted my sister instead of insisting on proper documentation. I called the one person I knew I could count on, my friend Jackson from work. He had a small basement apartment in his house that he occasionally rented out. Stay as long as you need, he said, giving me the address. I was about to list it on Airbnb, but it is yours if you want it. That night, sleeping on Jackson's pull-out sofa, surrounded by garbage bags of hastily packed belongings, I made a decision. This betrayal would not stand without consequences. Monday morning found me in the tastefully appointed office of Sandra Williams, a real estate attorney Jackson had recommended. I laid out my situation, providing copies of mortgage payments, receipts for renovations, and text messages documenting our original agreement. Sandra listened carefully, taking notes and asking occasional questions. When I finished my story, she leaned back in her leather chair and sighed. Unfortunately, Mr. Hayes, verbal agreements regarding real estate are extremely difficult to enforce. The law in our state requires such agreements to be in writing. So there is nothing I can do, I asked, deflated. I did not say that, she replied, leaning forward. There is a legal concept called constructive trust that might apply here. It is when someone holds legal title to property that rightfully belongs, at least in part, to someone else. But these cases are difficult to prove and expensive to litigate. What are my options? Sandra thought for a moment. There is one thing that might create some leverage. You mentioned you have been making the mortgage payments directly. I nodded. Every month for 6 years. It comes out of my account automatically. Have you stopped those payments yet? The thought had not even occurred to me. No. The next one is scheduled for the 1st. You might consider doing so immediately, she suggested. If they cannot make the payments without you, it could bring them to the negotiation table. The idea of deliberately causing financial hardship for my sister gave me pause. Despite everything, she was still family. But then I remembered my belongings in garbage bags, my missing keepsakes, the cold dismissal after years of sacrifice. Would that be legal, I asked. Absolutely. You have no legal obligation to pay someone else's mortgage, especially when they have evicted you from the property. It would simply be you stopping a voluntary payment. I considered the implications. What about my investment in the house, the renovations? That is where we would potentially pursue the constructive trust argument, but it would be a separate legal battle. Stopping payments is something you can do immediately that might prompt a more reasonable discussion about your contributions. As I left her office, I felt conflicted but resolute. Before taking such a drastic step, I decided to give Allison one final chance to make things right. I called her that evening, hoping for a rational conversation. What do you want, Hale? She answered, her voice clipped. I want to discuss what happened and find a fair resolution, I said, keeping my tone even. I have invested over $200,000 in the house. We had an agreement about eventual co-ownership. Her laugh was bitter. Is that what this is about, money? You paid rent, Hale? That is all it ever was. Rent. I paid the entire mortgage while you paid nothing. I completely renovated the house, increasing its value by at least 50%. That was your choice, she replied, dismissively. Nobody asked you to renovate. Allison, you know that is not true. We discussed every project. You approved the plans, picked out fixtures and paint colors. Well, Daniel says, I do not care what Daniel says, I interrupted. This is between you and me. Our parents wanted us both to have the house. The will says otherwise, she snapped. Look, I have to go. If you want your stuff, you have until Sunday. Anything left goes to Goodwill. The line went dead, and with it my last hope for an amicable resolution. The next day I visited my bank and canceled the automatic mortgage payment. Then I sent Allison a certified letter, laying out exactly what I had contributed to the house financially and what it would take to make things right, either a buyout of my investment or adding my name to the deed as we had originally agreed. Her response came by text. Not my problem anymore. 3 weeks later, the bank sent its first warning letter about the missed mortgage payment. I know this because Allison called me in a panic. The bank says we missed a payment. You need to fix this immediately. No, I do not, I replied calmly. As you pointed out, my name is not on any paperwork. The mortgage is your responsibility. You cannot do this to me, she shouted. You did this to yourself when you threw me out of the house I paid for, I said before ending the call. I blocked her number, and Daniel's creating the space I needed to rebuild my life without their drama. It was time to focus on my future rather than the family that had betrayed me. The next 3 months passed in a blur of work and adjustment. Jackson's basement apartment became home, and I threw myself into my construction projects, earning a promotion to senior project manager. On weekends, I hunted for furniture at estate sales to replace what had been left behind, slowly rebuilding my life piece by piece. The mortgage warnings escalated from letters to phone calls. Though I had blocked Allison and Daniel's numbers, they found other ways to reach me. Allison showed up at my job site one afternoon, creating a scene that nearly cost me a client. You are destroying our family, she shouted, as security escorted her from the property. We will lose the house because of you. A week later, Daniel confronted me in the parking lot of the grocery store, his face red with anger. You think you are so clever, he snarled, stepping too close. Allison is having anxiety attacks because of you. The bank is threatening foreclosure. That sounds like a problem for the homeowner, I replied, loading my groceries into my truck, which, as everyone has made abundantly clear, is not me. We cannot make the payments without your help, he admitted, his tone shifting from threatening to pleading. We have tried to refinance, but the bank will not approve us. For a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt. But then I remembered how easily they had discarded me after years of sacrifice. You should have thought about that before changing the locks, I said, climbing into my truck. Actions have consequences, Daniel. Through mutual friends, I learned that both Daniel and Troy had lost their jobs. Daniel for falsifying sales reports, and Troy for simply not showing up. Allison's nursing salary alone could not cover the mortgage and their lifestyle. They had tried to secure a new loan based on the increased value of the house, but their credit and income could not support it. 6 months after being locked out of my home, I received a text from an unknown number. Allison using a friend's phone to bypass my block. They're selling the house at auction next month. Please help us. Daniel made a mistake. He convinced me you were taking advantage, but I see now he was wrong. The message stirred complicated emotions. Part of me still cared about my sister, still remembered the little girl who had held my hand on the first day of kindergarten. But another part recognized the manipulative pattern. She was only reaching out because she needed something from me. I am sorry it has come to this, I replied. But you made your choice 6 months ago. It was Daniel's idea to change the locks, she protested. He said we needed to stand our ground. And you went along with it, I pointed out. You threw away 6 years of my financial support and renovation work because your husband did not like sharing space. I will make it right, she promised. Just help us stop the foreclosure, and we can talk about adding your name to the deed like we discussed. But the time for such negotiations had long passed. The house will sell at auction, and you will need to find somewhere else to live. I suggest you start looking now. On the day of the auction, Curiosity drew me to the courthouse steps. I stood at the back of the small crowd watching, as the auctioneer described the property. The very renovations I had performed now being used to attract bidders. The house sold for less than its true market value, a common outcome in foreclosure auctions, but still enough to pay off the remaining mortgage, with a small amount left over. Later that week, I learned through Jackson that Allison, Daniel, and Troy had moved into an extended stay motel while they figured out their next steps. The information brought me no joy, only a sense that justice had finally been served. The convenience store coffee tasted bitter as I filled my travel mug before work. 6 months had passed since the auction, and I had managed to avoid any further encounters with Allison or her husband. My life had found a new rhythm. I had started my own small renovation business on the side, taking on weekend projects while maintaining my day job. Hail. The voice behind me made my shoulders tense. I turned to see Allison standing there, looking thinner than I remembered. Daniel hovered near the store entrance, watching us nervously. "How are you?" she asked, her voice small. "I am fine," I replied, securing the lid on my coffee. "Yourself?" "We have been better," she admitted. "We are staying at Daniel's parents' house in Hagerstown. I commute to the hospital every day." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to walk away, but another part needed closure. "You ruined us," she suddenly hissed, her expression darkening. "We lost everything because of you." Before I could respond, Daniel approached, placing a restraining hand on her arm. "Allison, do not do this here." "No. Let her speak," I said, feeling strangely calm. "I would like to hear how I am responsible for the consequences of your actions." "You stopped paying the mortgage," she exclaimed, drawing glances from other customers. "You knew we could not afford it. And you changed the locks on the house I had paid for and renovated for 6 years," I replied evenly. "You threw my belongings into garbage bags and claimed it was just rent I had been paying all along." Daniel surprisingly looked ashamed. "Look, man, I pushed for that. I convinced her we needed to get you out." Daniel, Allison gasped. "No, he deserves the truth," Daniel continued. "I gambled away our savings. The money that was supposed to help with the mortgage after you left. I told Allison it was a sure investment, but I lost it all at the casino in Atlantic City. The revelation should have felt vindicating, but instead it just made me sad. All of this destruction, the loss of our family home, the severing of sibling bonds, stemmed from Daniel's addiction and lies. I am sorry to hear that I said honestly, but it does not change what happened. We could have worked something out if you had just kept paying," Allison insisted, tears forming. I shook my head. "No, Allison. That was never going to happen. You cannot betray someone's trust completely and then expect them to keep supporting you. So, that is it. 6 years of me being there for you means nothing," she demanded. The question made me laugh despite myself. 6 years of you being there for me. I paid every mortgage payment. I renovated the entire house. I was the one being there for you. Daniel tugged at her arm again. "Come on, Allison. This is not helping." For a moment I saw a flicker of the sister I had once known in her eyes. Vulnerability, replacing righteous anger. But then the hardness returned. "You will regret this," she said quietly. "Family is supposed to forgive." As I watched them leave the store, I realized I did forgive her. Forgiveness did not mean allowing myself to be used or continuing to enable their poor choices. It meant accepting what had happened and moving forward with my life unburdened by bitterness or the need for revenge. That day marked a turning point. I had been saving aggressively since striking out on my own, and with my excellent credit and construction experience, I secured a loan to purchase a small fixer-upper across town. The property needed work, exactly the kind of work I excelled at, but it had good bones and potential. Most importantly, every document was in my name alone. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, every cabinet I installed benefited me directly. There was something deeply therapeutic about building something that was truly mine. My friendship with Sandra, the attorney who had advised me during the conflict with Allison, gradually evolved into something more. She appreciated my craftsmanship and honesty, and I admired her intelligence and compassion. We moved slowly, both of us cautious after past disappointments, but the foundation we built felt solid. A year after purchasing my house, I received a letter from Allison. She and Daniel had separated. She was living in an apartment near the hospital and wanted to meet to apologize properly. I considered the invitation, carefully consulting with Sandra before agreeing to coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was difficult, but necessary. Allison had begun to recognize how Daniel's influence had poisoned our relationship and her own judgment. While I accepted her apology, we both understood that our relationship would never return to what it had been. Some betrayals leave permanent scars even after forgiveness. I learned that the most valuable renovation I had ever undertaken was not of a physical structure, but of my own boundaries and self-respect. Family loyalty is important, but not when it becomes a one-way street of sacrifice. Enabling harmful behavior is not love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people to experience the natural consequences of their choices. Today I stand in the finished kitchen of my own home, morning light streaming through windows I installed myself, and feel a peace that was hard-won through painful experience. The house is smaller than our family home was, but every inch of it represents my vision and my work. No one can take it from me because I protected myself legally from the start. Sometimes I wonder what our parents would think about how things turned out. I believe they would be sad about the division between their children, but would understand that I had to protect myself from being exploited in the name of family. The true meaning of family is not blind loyalty or endless sacrifice. It is mutual respect, honesty, and support that flows in both directions. Have you ever had to walk away from family members who took your generosity for granted? Leave a comment below with your experience. And if this story of betrayal and ultimately finding peace resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. Share this video with someone who might be struggling to set boundaries with family. Sometimes the hardest people to say no to are the ones we love the most. Thank you for listening. And remember, you cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm.